Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. This is March 1st through 7th, 2021. My name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium here in Brooklyn, New York, and I work under the name Empowering Astrology. So every week we gather to talk not just about the astrology, but sort of get a bigger picture of what's going on, because the astrology is a couple of things. One, the astrology tells us about time. How do we live time? The different energies that we're working with. What time is it? Meaning, what time is it in our zodiac calendar? But also this idea that the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. The astrology is something that you and inhabit and live through. So how do we use this time together or in your own personal work to inhabit this astrology in a much different way? So this is how we connect and we work together every week. So let's dive in. So this week we've got a couple of main things to look at. And actually, let's back up for a second. Well, it's the beginning of the month, so it's a whole new horoscope season. I actually released my video horoscopes. They're on YouTube or they're on my website presently. I did put a link in the show notes, so you can go and check out my monthly horoscopes. As I announced back in December, I'm now doing the different signs on what's it called? On a sun sign levels. So read for your sun sign, read for your rising sign. And I often get this question, so I'm just saying it for those that are wondering. Both of those two signs talk about your life, some sort of parallel thing that's happening. One is not more than the other, although you may resonate more with one sign than the other, but something is happening in both those signs. And this is, of course, if you know your rising sign, you need to know your exact birth time to know your rising sign. So anyway, just to reintroduce myself, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm here in Brooklyn, New York, and I see some familiar faces on the chat. So just say hello. Tell me where you are watching from. I can't travel, so I have to travel vicariously through you all. I know some of you are in Canada, some of you are waking up in Australia, sort of watching this tomorrow on March 2nd, or you're here in the United States with me. So this week we have two things happening. One, Mars goes into Gemini. So Mars is part of a class of planets called personal planets. So we have the sun and the moon. They're what are called the lights of the sky. The moon reflects light, the sun gives light. That talks about sort of where the action is happening, where we're sort of being pulled to at any moment. And then there's Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. Venus is the planet of relationships, compromise, social interaction. But when we get to Mars, Mars is the planet that gives us, I call it get up and go. Mars is the gas of the chart. Mars sort of motivates us to move forward. It is the planet that rules Aries and Scorpio, and we're going to be in Aries season at the end of this month. So we need Mars. No Mars, we're stuck. No Mars, we don't have the courage or bravery to go after what we want. It's a sign that's very driven. It loves competition, for example. So it's been in Taurus since January 6th. So what was Mars motivated about since January? Mars was motivated to slow down. Mars was motivated to get its feet on the ground, to enjoy life. Taurus is a sign that's very much about pleasure, physical pleasure, food, comfort, money, and accumulating the resources that we need. So maybe on some bigger level, you all were sort of focusing on your material lives and these sort of deeper themes around value and worth over the last 2 months or 5-6 weeks. While Mars was in Taurus, we had some pretty tense energies happening between Taurus. We had Mars in Taurus, we had Uranus in Taurus, and they were making what was called a square to all these planets, Saturn, Jupiter, and Aquarius. So we had a lot of tense energies in January and February, and maybe when you all look back, you're like, wow, my life sort of was going in a different direction. Or maybe you sort of made some big changes, or maybe you even saw some drama in your life the past couple of months. But at the heart of these 2 months, January and February 2021, was to present you with the story that you're going to be working through for the rest of the year. It's as if, I've said this before, it's as if in 2021 you have one foot in a new life, you have one foot in an old life. And maybe some of you, that foot in the old life, you're really afraid to let go. Or maybe for some of you, you're ready to let go. Or maybe for some of you, you feel stuck. But 2021 is trying to push you in a new direction. That's where we're seeing some of the tension this year with the Saturn Uranus square throughout 2021. So Mars gets out of Taurus, so it's sort of bringing the pressure off. But it's doing a couple of other things. As I said earlier, Mars is action, it's motivation, it's heating up Gemini. Gemini is the sign of communication, voice, ideas, learning, education, travel. I know we really can't travel that much right now, but maybe you have to do errands. Maybe you have to go out of town for whatever reason. There's a sense of movement and restlessness when Mars is in Gemini. It will go, if I hadn't said this already, it will go into Gemini on March 3rd. So this will be Wednesday, March 3rd. I think that might be March 4th for those who are a little bit further afield. So there's some part of our life that's heating up. We're now feeling more restless. Mars Gemini is actually an air sign. So we've had a lot of things going on in the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and also Aquarius, where we had a lot of planets in February in Aquarius. So air sign wants to interact, it wants to socialize, it wants to talk, it wants to connect, it wants to read, it wants to listen. So this is sort of this dominant element that we sort of keep coming back to in 2021. So it'll be interesting to see a little bit of the change in narrative this week when Mars goes into Gemini. The other thing that's going on is that when Mars goes into Gemini, it's going to start to pick up on the lunar nodes. So maybe for those who've been paying attention, the lunar nodes have been in Gemini and Sagittarius since I think it was May of 2020. Every 18 months, the lunar nodes, which, side note for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, the lunar nodes, they're not planets, they're 2 points in the sky. They are these 2 points that make eclipses happen. So on a very astronomical level, they sort of function to tell you where the eclipses are going to happen. So because they are now in Gemini and Sagittarius, it tells us that we are having or will have eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius. Eclipses, they sort of push along the narrative astrologically. You want to predict what's going to happen this year, look to see where the eclipses are happening, because you can guarantee almost, although I'm not a betting person, but I would pretty much almost bet that you will see some sort of shift or change the narrative, change in the scenery, and that part of your life. The North Node is in Gemini right now. North Node brings in new experiences. South Node, Sagittarius. So this is saying to us that the South Node is like the past. It's sort of where we're trying to work through a story. And maybe that story is complicated. So South Node in Sagittarius, we have to look at our faith, our truth, the things that we believe in, the convictions that we have, sometimes the convictions that we will fight to the death for and maybe not for the best reasons. So this is a time when we all have to re-examine what we believe in. What do we think is true? And sort of my mantra while the South Node is in Sagittarius, I tell people, try this, like, maybe I'm wrong. I think that that's a good way to sort of open things up when we say, maybe I'm wrong. Sagittarius is a sign that's known for so much wisdom and knowledge, and 99% of the time, they are right. But it's that sort of 1% that we can't have our blinders on. So you're thinking, well, Katie, I don't have anything in Sagittarius, but this is a collective experience. Collectively, we have to re-examine where maybe we are wrong. And then the North Node is in Sagittarius. The North Node is in Gemini. So this is about getting a new perspective, new ideas, new information. So we have to see things from a new perspective. And this is why sort of there's this dynamic energy that's happening. It's very much about faith and truth and meaning and what we believe, and even our ability to travel right now. The last time the lunar nodes, the south node was in Sagittarius, north node was in Gemini, was during 9/11 and all the changes that happened to the travel industry. So that was 18, 19 years ago. And that was the last time we had the nodes and the eclipses in this direction. So that was a kind of like a long backstory to say, okay, here we are. Mars is now in Gemini, and over the next 5-6 weeks, it's bringing this sort of dynamic story forward. And it's actually bringing a dynamic story forward in a certain part of your life. And I'll go around in a few moments and explain where. Mars will start to get to what are called eclipse degrees. 15 Sag was where we had the lunar eclipse on June 5th, 2020. We had a lunar eclipse at 8 Gemini on November 30th, and we had, December 14th at 23 Sag. So boom, 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 Mars is an activator. Mars is a spark. Mars is saying this sort of energy that we are all sort of navigating this year about faith and truth and meaning and beliefs and ideas and education now comes forward. When I was writing about last week's I have eclipses on the brain, sorry. When I was writing about the full moon that we had on Saturday, February 27th, this full moon was at the same degree, 8 Virgo, to the 8 Gemini lunar eclipse that we had back in November. There's a lot of technical data. I don't know. A lot of things are in Aquarius right now. Just we'll go with it. Aquarius is a very technical sign. So this says that we're going to kind of see these degrees activated. And that's happening this week, even though I said, well, mid-March, when Mars gets to 8 Gemini, we're going to see that move forward. But this week, with Mars going into Gemini, it sort of starts the story, initiates the story or reactivates the story. And then later this week, the Sun, the Pisces Sun, it crosses the lunar nodes. And that will happen on Friday, March 5th. It will get to about 15 Pisces, and I'll make what's called a cross to that lunar nodes. In a nutshell, we have eclipse energy this week. And maybe you're thinking, wait, we had eclipses back in November, December. We're having eclipses in May, June, but we're at the midpoint between these two eclipses. And when we're at the midpoint, it's called at the bending. That's like the technical astrological term. It's like time and life and fate and destiny. I know those are big words. We're sort of turning a corner in some story. So for some of you, you are turning a corner this week. If you are a Gemini, if you are a Sag, quite possibly if you are Virgo and a Pisces as well. These are the 4 signs that are really seeing this eclipse energy manifest in their life right now. Eclipses, as I said earlier, they make things happen. They push along the narrative of our life. They will coincide with moves, with birth, with marriages, with changes. Not necessarily bad, but just changes nonetheless. So let's just go quickly around the zodiac so we can understand where this eclipse energy is manifesting right now. So again, it's Pisces season, but there's sort of this story that's unfolding this week in a completely different area of our chart. So Aries, Gemini, is your sign of information, ideas, voice, communications. One of your travel signs, it's one of your education signs. So Mars going into this part of your chart, Mars is you, by the way. Aries is ruled by Mars. You are entering a 5-6 week period where you're going to have a lot of energy, a lot of movement, a lot of curiosity. Mars is like a fire planet, and then it's in Gemini, it's air. What happens when air and fire come together? It gets bigger. So maybe you're going to get bigger. Your ideas are going to get bigger. Your movements are going to get bigger. Maybe you're going to get restless and curious. But this part of your chart, because the eclipses has already been activated over the last 4 4 or 5 months, if I'm doing my math really quickly. So this is saying to you, Aries, that just as I was saying on a more global level for everybody, you have to get a new perspective. Right now, you need to really examine what you believe in, the things that you really put the full weight of your faith and your truth and your convictions behind, because maybe you're wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But the idea is that you need to sort of open your eyes a little bit and get things from a different perspective. So maybe right now it's about taking classes. Maybe it's getting back to basics. Maybe it's having lots of conversations. Maybe it's workshops. Maybe it's a lot of online Zoom. Maybe you're sort of getting back to your books or whatever. But maybe you're having to sort of realize something about schooling, because the South Node is in your sign of education. So I don't know if you are in school, or maybe you're thinking about going back to school. This is also relevant during this time. So that's sort of, and I will also add Aries, because it's Pisces season, you're at the end of your astrological calendar. So you're doing a lot of soul searching right now. You're going within. And maybe this Mars going to Gemini is going to help you have the voice to be able to communicate what you're feeling within, what's your inner truth right now. Taurus. So Gemini is your money sign. Your money sign, like how you earn a living, the money in the bank, what you need in order to feel safe and secure. So Mars going into this part of your chart, in a way, it really motivates you to do the things that Taurus loves to do: spend money, accumulate money, or accumulate goods and resources. So maybe you're finding that you're kind of spending more money than you normally do. Or if it's not about money, then it's like, what do you need in order to feel rooted and stable and grounded in life? Do you need to get more work? I realize that not everybody is in a good place right now. Maybe you need to make some changes in how you earn a living. Mars is really motivating and activating this part of your chart. But also Mars is getting down to like a little bit more of an esoteric point. What is your value? What do you value? Because maybe the things that you have valued, there needs to be a shift. Now, the South Node is in what's called your 8th house, 8th room, 8th sign. So you need to sort of move away from maybe some fears, things around trust that are getting in the way of you being able to create stability in your life. And then side note, Taurus, you're already in a much bigger period of time where you're having to reinvent a lot of things. So you're sort of having to hunker down a little bit and get your feet on solid ground, because so much has been, and actually so much will continue to shift for you this year. Gemini. So Mars is getting out of your 12th sign, which is a little bit of a sleepy place for Mars. And now it's going into your sign. So Mars in your sign is like a jolt. It's like somebody gave you a double shot of espresso. It's energy, it's fire, it's motivation, it's movement. So maybe suddenly you're like, wait, I got all this energy. What do I do with it? We have to understand that Mars is a very physical sign. It needs a lot of physical outlet, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's doing some sort of fitness, whether you're channeling it into some sort of project or activity. Because you're Gemini rising, you might also have a lot to say. Now, Mars doesn't have a reputation for diplomacy. It's more driven to sort of get what it wants, as opposed to maybe looking at what other people want and need. So you might have a lot to say. Some of it might not be diplomatic, but maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe you need to sort of voice what you need to voice. Maybe it's your truth, your convictions. Maybe it's what you believe in, your ideology, your faith. Something to keep in mind. So moving, and also because the eclipse, sorry, not to leave Gemini too quickly, the eclipses are also happening in Gemini and Sagittarius. So This is in a way looking back, but also presaging the eclipses that are going to happen in, I think it's May 26th of 2021 and June 10th of 2021. When the eclipses are happening in your sign or the sign of your rising, if you're Gemini rising, your life is taking a turn. It's a time of powerful new beginnings. Major events tend to happen at this time, and there's also this big focus on relationships at the moment. So maybe if you're in a relationship, you're having to navigate something within your relationship. If you're not in a relationship, maybe somebody is coming into your life. Maybe because the South Node is in your relationship sign, there's something that talks about an old story or a past issue or a past thread that needs some more work or some more connection. So this might be a very dynamic time for you, Gemini. So this is just something for you to put on your radar. Cancer. So Gemini is your last sign. When a planet like Mars reaches the last sign, it's time to wind down. It's time to rest. Now, I said at the beginning of our time together that Mars is a planet that's about motivation and action. But when it gets to this part of your chart, it can't take action in the way that it normally would like to take action, because the last part of the chart is the least worldly, meaning it's not about physical reality. It's about your dreams. It's about your unconscious. It's about going deep within to find your truth, your meaning. This sign tries to connect you back to source, back to God, spirit, energy, whatever you want to call it. But it's also a place where you need to go and to rest and reflect and recuperate. So maybe you're feeling a little bit lower energy at this time, Cancer. You're in a bigger period of time where you're doing a lot of emotional heavy lifting. So Mars could actually give you the courage and motivation to let things go. Let go of the past, let go of the things that you don't need to hold on to anymore. And this also talks about a bigger story, because you have that North Node and those North Node eclipses in your last sign, and then you have the South Node in your sixth sign of Sagittarius. So this is saying that you're working on your spiritual health as much as you are working on your physical health right now. And much as you need to let go of things on a physical level, maybe you also need to let go of things on an internal, spiritual, energetic level. So Mars is really activating this process of letting go. And I say this as a Scorpio, I realize letting go is not always everybody's jam, as they say. But I tell people, when you get to this part of your astrology, it's about looking at the spiritual baggage that you've been carrying. And this could be the stuff that you've been carrying the last year. It could be the stuff you've been carrying this lifetime. It could be the stuff you've been carrying multiple lifetimes. So the more that you do the work at this point, the better it is overall, because it's like it lightens the load on a deeper level. Leo. So this Mars is going into your sign of community, friendships, social network, how you kind of look ahead towards the future. What are your hopes? What are your wishes? So Mars is motivating you to connect, to network. And maybe you're doing a lot of work as much as one can these days, but maybe it's all Zoom dates and a lot of virtual online connection. But there's this kind of deeper story that's happening right now, Leo. It's like, who's your community? Where do you belong? You're a sign that's so much about individuality and self, but where does that all connect you to? So you're really getting pushed to, of course, not leave yourself behind, but find the balance between you and maybe this kind of well-developed sense of self versus how does that fit into something larger. So this could be a time when you are very motivated to find your groups, find your community, to feel like you're not alone in this world. So Mars also, because Mars, again, it's not a very diplomatic planet, it's more singular, it's more I than we. It's in a part of the chart that is more we. So it can be a little brusque depending on how you live this energy, maybe you're having a little bit of something come up with a friend, or you're having something come up, maybe an argument or disagreement with people in your community or a group that you're involved in. But it sort of touches on these bigger themes around needing to know where you fit and who your people are and who you can trust, of course. So with these eclipses that are coming in, have been happening since 2020, this is about new friends. Side note, and this is for everybody, because this is something that I've noticed coming up now that Saturn is in Aquarius. Aquarius is really brutal when it comes to friendship, because Saturn has a high bar. Saturn says this person is your friend, this person is not your friend. So Saturn's sort of going through your contacts and deleting, or going through your social networks and deleting, because the people that need to be in our lives right now, Saturn is saying that have to be rock solid. So I say that as sort of the side note for Leo, that as you're looking towards groups and community and you've got Saturn in your relationship sign, your friends also need to be rock solid. They need to be a support at this time. You need to know who you can trust and who you can turn to at this time. Virgo. So Gemini is your career sign. So Mars, when it gets to this part of the chart, it only does this every 2 years. Mars has what's called a 2-year cycle. So this is a natural career peak for you. Now, Gemini, if you are looking for work, this is your time to really use Mars's action and energy and motivation to go out there in the world. This part of the chart is the highest. It's the most visible part of your chart. It talks about the title after your name, the role that you play in the world, and the responsibilities that you have. So if this is a time when you need to make a career move or a career change or get work, use this time until I think it's April 23rd while Mars is in this part of the chart. Now, there have been eclipses in this part of your chart, so we have to also look at this bigger story that maybe there's already been career changes, because we had eclipses in Gemini back in November 30th. So at the end of 2020, you had eclipse energy happening in your career sign, and maybe you closed out the year promotion. Maybe you closed out the year with a job change. Maybe, hopefully not, something like a job loss. But you have some, allies going on with the other planets. So I would just use this time wisely. By the way, because the South Node is in the bottom of your chart, home, family, roots, foundation, this eclipse energy might sort of echo back to the fact that you might be moving. Maybe you have moved. Maybe there has been changes in the home, or maybe you're planning to make changes in the home. So with this kind of dynamic eclipse energy happening for you, Virgo, it's really about the direction that your life is taking right now, and sort of the responsibilities that you're taking on as well. So you might be seeing that 2021 for you, Virgo, is a time of next big steps up. Libra. So Mars is reaching this part of your chart. It's your 9th sign, talks about faith, truth, meaning. So Mars in this part of the chart, it has a lot to say, but it also has a lot of opinions. It sort of takes on this energy of Sagittarius. So maybe you have a lot of wisdom and knowledge to share. Maybe you have at this point accumulated a lot of wisdom and knowledge, but sometimes Mars, not so diplomatic. You have to be a little careful about how what you're saying is maybe being received. Maybe it's ruffling some feathers, maybe it's a little pointed. Nevertheless, Mars is still motivating you and inspiring you to search and explore. In normal times, this is when I would tell you that it's quite possible that you'd be making some sort of long distance journey, or maybe even some foreign travel. Again, we're not in normal times. So maybe that desire, that push, that need is going to happen in some other form, because we've all been sort of cooped up in our 4 walls for a while. How do we start to see the world without going too far? Is it education? Because seeing the world does actually talk to education. Maybe Libra, you're thinking about going back to school, and Mars is really giving you the push, the desire to actually make that happen. Maybe you need to explore other types of learning. Maybe it's taking some classes or something that's for your professional life. But this is a time when you have a lot to say and a lot to think. There is this kind of reverse dynamic that's happening because you're sort of having to look at what you believe in like everybody else, but there's a sense of like communicating what you believe in and like not sort of shying away from saying what you believe in, but also knowing how to phrase it. Libra, you are the natural of the zodiac, so maybe you're just sharpening and honing your diplomacy skills right now. So this is maybe not as a dynamic energy as other signs, but it is a time when education, travel, writing and publishing, speaking, broadcast are all highlighted for you. Scorpio. So Gemini is your 8th sign. What I tell people is that even though it doesn't make sense on paper, Gemini and Scorpio actually have a lot in common because Gemini is Scorpio's 8th sign. So the 8th sign is like Scorpio. You have to go into the depths. You have to face yourself. You have to look within. So now that Mars is Scorpio's planet, it's leaving Taurus, your relationship sign, and it's going to Gemini. So you are now being motivated to do very scorpionic things, which is to kind of dive into the deepest parts of yourself. You could say that that's been happening since November with the eclipses. Maybe you've had to do a lot of transformation work over the last 4-5 months. So this Mars is actually making you go deeper, if that's even possible, Scorpio. And if you are a Scorpio and you're watching, kind of let me know how you're doing. Maybe Scorpio needs a little bit of a hug right now. So how do you go deeper? And there's a sense of having, Gemini being a sign of duality, sign of light and shadow, and the shadow self that lives within. So you're doing a lot of shadow work over the next 5-6 weeks. This part of the chart also talks about money. So it's just more like finance, more like assets, more like the things that you income from other sources. So maybe you're having to sort through some loans or do things around estate planning or financial planning, talk to a financial advisor right now. Maybe you just need to deal with taxes or debts. So it's kind of a money time for you as well. But there's this sort of dynamic energy that's happening with the eclipses since last year where you're having to sort of leave behind solid ground and dive into the unknown. You're going to have to trust yourself. You're going to have to trust, this leap of faith that's happening for you, Scorpio, because you're diving into the dark. And even though you're a sign that is known for diving into the dark, but the reality is that most times you don't want to because it's a lot. But you're having to dive into the dark right now, but do you know if you're safe? Well, that's the leap of faith. That's the South Node in Sagittarius for you. So Mars sort of picking up on these eclipse degrees is bringing forward this money story, the story about power, control, intimacy, vulnerability, sexuality, and also this story around trusting yourself, going deep within, and doing a lot of profound, possibly psychological transformation. Sagittarius. So as I was saying with Gemini, you're sort of opposite sign, that these eclipses are happening in your sign. So Gemini is your relationship sign, Sagittarius. So Mars has now reached your relationship sign. Now, traditionally Mars in this part of the chart, it's not super smooth because Mars is more known about individuality and sort of taking the lead than it is about the thing that we would normally do in this part of the chart, which is learning to cooperate, learning to communicate, learning to interact and to socialize. But that said, Mars is heating this up, and it's heating up a story around relationships that you have been working on since last year. So Sag, you're in the boat with Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, with life being kind of dynamic right now. Things are shifting, things are changing. You are realizing, because the South Node is in Sagittarius, that it's more about other people than maybe it necessarily is about you right now. So this eclipse is actually trying to get you to leave yourself behind in the best possible way and connect to other people. Maybe you know, because we're in these times right now, we don't really see a lot of people. Like, how do you still connect? How do you still interact and socialize? Now, on a very traditional way of looking at things, when the eclipses are in this part of the chart, it's very like classical astrology for there to be a relationship, a new relationship, maybe even a marriage. This also can include cohabitation, or if you're in an existing relationship, there will likely be changes. It could be something as simple as you and your partner take the next step up in the relationship, whether it's a move, whether it's starting a family, whether it's going a new direction or something happening in your partner's life. If things are not super smooth in an existing relationship, here comes Mars, and Mars sort of says that whatever that thing was, that little fire in the corner, is now like a huge fire. You have to pay attention to it. So a little slight friendly warning for Sagittarius who are in relationships that need some work. Mars is going to start to push some buttons. Capricorn. Gemini is your sign of health and wellness. It's how you take care of your body. It's the work that you do, the projects you do, the schedule you keep. So Mars in this part of the chart is a bit of a workaholic. It will keep going, kind of like Energizer Bunny. That might be like an American cultural reference, but it means it has a lot of energy and it keeps going. So you might be a little all over the place over the next few weeks, Capricorn, because you're going to have a million ideas and you're like, well, how do I actually make them happen? So how do you, and this is kind of your work, Capricorn, create some organization and create some structure? This is a very Capricorn thing, of course. Otherwise, Mars is going to be a lot of fire, but it needs some focus. It needs some planning, it needs some structure. On the health and wellness side of things, you have these eclipses that have been happening in what are called your 6 signs and your 12 signs. So this is sort of talking about that dynamic between physical health and spiritual health. So this is a time when you have to focus on your physical body. You cannot ignore your physical body. If you've been working and sort of like, oh, it's 5 p.m., I forgot to eat, or I forgot to do this or that on a very kind of human level, this eclipse is really, or not eclipse, this Mars time is really bringing this forward. With the South Node in your 12th sign, this is about you shedding the past, you letting go of addictions, you letting go of things that you've been attached to that you don't need anymore. So that's this kind of dynamic energy that's happening. And if there's been anything going on with health, Mars might sort of make things a little bit bigger. So I always tell people, get ahead of things. If Mars is coming as part of your chart and you know you need to start getting some physical exercise to kind of get the blood pumping and flowing, then maybe make some intentions this week. Aquarius. So Mars is arriving in the part of your chart that talks about you on some level, how your creative talents, how you express yourself, how you share yourself, personality, persona, identity. So Mars in this part of the chart, you tend to have a lot of personality. It sort of lights you up. You get very creative and you want to do something with that energy. Hopefully, you don't get a little too cocky with Mars in this part of your chart, but if you have any sort of creative bone in your body, you're going to have this Mars fire kind of helping you. Mars is also stoking the energies of passion. Side note, we need passion in life. The 5th sign in astrology talks about passion. It talks about a lot of things, but at the core of it, it talks about passion. The 6th sign, which is right next door to passion, is work. It's the projects, it's the craft, it's the form. You need passion, you need that creative spark in order for you to get to the 6th sign. Because if you try to skip the passion, you go straight into the 6th sign and then you burn out because you have no fuel, or you it's just drudgery. So it's just a reminder, Aquarius, especially if you've just had all drudgery, if you sort of lost your flame, how do you find it again? Now, there are eclipses happening in this part of your chart, so it's a natural time for you to really reconnect with who you are. And I mean who you are on the deepest parts of you, that sort of that flame within, that spark, that essence that makes you you. On a classical traditional side of things, when there are eclipses in this part of the chart, it does talk about children, pregnancy, and fertility. So I mention this in case it's relevant to you. Maybe this is time to start a family, or maybe this is time to get pregnant, and Mars, doing its very sort of natural Mars things, makes that happen. The South Node is in the part of your chart, kind of switching gears. The South Node is in the part of your chart that talks about community, connection. Now, Aquarius is a sign that is about humanity. It is about community, but it's also the sign that can feel so disconnected. It feels like it doesn't have friends, or it feels different, or it feels like an outsider. So this dynamic that's happening with the eclipses and this eclipse energy is saying, like, how do you really rediscover who you are and honor who you are and share who you are, so that you know exactly where you belong. You don't have that feeling of being an outsider or not belonging. So that's sort of this old belief, this old pattern that you're trying to leave behind, Aquarius. Finally, Pisces. So Pisces, we are getting to the part of your chart that talks about home and family. Mars has gotten to the bottom, so this is a natural time when there are changes in the home. Mars makes things happen. You are already in this bigger period of time since 2020 where maybe you have been thinking of a move, planning a move, or maybe you have already moved. So Mars, when it gets to this part of the chart, it's not quiet. In fact, your home environment might start to get very noisy, busy. It's like suddenly the next door neighbors are having construction and you're like, why is it so noisy in my house? But if you are thinking about moving, Mars is going to make you take the next step. It could mean that this happens actually a little bit further on, like May or June, but this is sort of the classic predictive astrology. So Mars is at the bottom of your chart, and it's also about family. It's also about the past, and Mars can sometimes bring up a lot of complicated emotions. This sort of like, am I safe? Do I have everything? Am I loved? Because can be a little bit of an infantile energy that is located at this part of the chart. And I always think when Mars, with Mars and the moon, or Mars in Cancer, or Mars in this part of the chart, it brings up this very primal instinct where it's like, am I alone? You need to be held, you need to be swaddled. So maybe if you're feeling some tantrums come up, Pisces, it's because some really deep core stuff is getting activated, because Mars activates things. With the South Node in the top of your chart, it's talking about your career, your direction in life, and maybe you have seen some changes in your professional life since June of last year, or even November, December of last year. There was a solar eclipse, by the way, on December 17th. So maybe you saw something happen in December or even November, which was about a change in your professional life. So this is sort of the next step in that story. There is a need to make some changes in your career right now. Maybe sort of what you were holding on to, or this belief of what you need to do in the world, has to shift, has to change. But now Mars is at the bottom of your chart and is saying, on a little move or an esoteric level, what do you need in order to sort of create a new foundation in your life that will then support your professional initiatives? So that's a look at Mars through the 12 signs. Thank you all for sticking with me. So that's the astrology of this week. It's like I said, the lunar nodes are getting activated. We have Mars starting to also activate some eclipse degrees. So the first 2 weeks and even the 3 weeks of March, we're going to see sort of the doors of life, or the analogy I use with eclipses is that it's like there's a stage. It's your life. The curtain comes down on one act, the curtain comes up on another act. It's a It's a new stage. I mean, it's a new setting. It's a new set. It's new characters. And it can feel dramatic. It can feel sudden. Or there's a sense of like a palpable sense of shift. So this is the energy that we're working with in Mars. So here, those were some pointers for you to see how that looks in your life and how it's relevant to your life. So thank you all for joining me for another live look at the astrology. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I am with Empowering Astrology. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Instagram, IGTV. I'm on Twitter, and of course, Facebook. You can also watch the replay, and if you're watching the replay, do give a little shout out. Another friendly reminder, your March horoscopes are now live. They are now in a video format. You can look at them on YouTube, Empowering Astrology, or go to my website. So I hope to see you all next week. I see some familiar faces in the chat, so love seeing familiar faces again and again. So I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye.